and as promised, we find ourselves at Christchurch Priory. The time has just gone 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just quarter past actually, and it's a not too bad day, a bit blustery, some clouds and all that sort of stuff, classic southern England mid to late September weather really. But anyway, I am now at the front of the Priory and in Christchurch, and I will turn the camera around and then I will start taking a look at not only this building but its immediate surroundings as well. So I'll flip the camera around, much better view. There we go. And that is exactly the building I am talking about. So without further ado, I'm gonna get in a little bit closer, and then we'll have a little look at signage and stuff that's been chiseled into the wall and stuff that's been added, gargoyle-esque, and all that sort of thing, because again, this is a building that has plenty of evidence of multiple add-ons and multiple facelifts, and this and that and the other. So the Priory is the size of a cathedral, according to the descriptions given in the official narrative. This building is very, very big. I'm not going to go inside while doing the live stream because I am going to get a very bad reception in there. So what I'll do is I will just keep this live stream for the next hour or two focused on the exterior of the building and the immediate surroundings as well. So that's yeah, that's something I'm going to be looking at, as opposed to going inside the building and examining, as it were, beams and slabs in the ground and dates on graves and tombstones and stuff like that. To be honest with you, that's not the route I'm going to go. I'm going to focus, as I said in the last video, more on the logistical element and the impossibility of it, right? And for that we need to use our common sense and our discernment and our logic, our own personal logic, as opposed to just looking and seeing if it fills up the history books nicely. That's not what we're after. We're looking at anomalies, discrepancies, we're identifying them, we're pointing them out. And the more we point out, the more we identify, and the more we, sound off about, well, messages do get through eventually to someone somewhere. And even if it's just a question of that we know they know that we know kind of thing, right? But anyway, I hope you are all doing well. I'm just sort of introducing a little bit, last couple of minutes. Thank you to all those who checked in on my last live stream a couple of days ago when I went around the Boscombe area. It's kind of where I live. It's a borough of Bournemouth, and there's lots of little boroughs all interconnected. So you have Boscombe, and you have Springbourne and Southbourne and Eyford, and then you go a bit further, you've got Westbourne, and then and then Bournemouth Town Centre and all that. There's quite a few. And as I mentioned on that live stream, there are a heck of a lot of churches, or what we call churches now, and lots of other, let's say, out of place looking buildings compared with what we've built in our recent memory. So even if we go back to, let's say, World War II, which is where a lot of the so-called new building took place, yeah, that is the case, isn't it? That those buildings all look relatively similar, but yet these older, what I would like to call kind of concealed history, hidden history type buildings, the ones that we don't know the truth about, let's say. I'm going to avoid using any words that connect it up with Tartaria or anything like that, because I don't think that's a correct description. Just looking at all sorts of the different architecture and all that sort of stuff, I'm not surprised that the the mainstream narrative went straight with Renaissance, Gothic, Greek, Roman, whatever, this, that, and the other. They had to categorize it all because, of course, there are lots of telltale signs in terms of styles and in terms of materials used. Locations are one thing that are always relatively similar. So you'll find water nearby, either in the form of a stream or directly at a coastline or canals that have been built. And in fact, you don't have to go far and you'll see what looks like aqueducts, viaducts, remnants thereof, as I noticed coming into Christchurch today in the bus. So I think next time I do a video, I'll get off just on the outskirts and I will take that in instead, not instead, but as well, because there is quite a lot to look at in this town, Christchurch, quite a lot. Yeah, and of course in the UK, especially in England, can't talk for Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland, but certainly in England, you gain city status if you have a cathedral. So you can have a small town. If it's got a cathedral, it will become a city. Now this is a big building, but they've called it a priory. They haven't called it as a cathedral, so Christchurch is not a city. Go to Salisbury, however, or Winchester, they're quite small towns, but it's their cathedrals that give them city status. Right. Anyway, so here we are outside the Priory in Christchurch in the south coast of England. Gorgeous day. Let's take a little walk around, and please bear with me because I've done a little bit of filming here before in the past, and sometimes the connection has gone a bit wonky, which is a bit odd considering that we should have these satellites right above our heads, so it shouldn't really be an issue. But hey ho, there we go. An issue it remains in 2022, even though the President of the United States could call one of his astronauts back in '69 with far more inferior technology at his disposal. Never mind 2 spinning bodies and all the other hurtling we're doing through space. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So let's take a look at this building. Follow the path round. We'll go around the left, and then we'll follow it nicely round. I've kind of ignored some of the older buildings that I saw coming in, as I mentioned, because I want to make it really about this stunning beauty. Quite remarkable. So here I am. This is the front of the Priory, Christchurch. So let's have a little walk down here and see what we can discover. As I said earlier, beautiful day, bit on the windy side, blustery side. I think we can all see that we're heading towards the autumn. But let's have a look at some of this. I mean, it is a gorgeous building, is it not? So what I'm going to do is just go around the outside of it a little bit, show you the, you know, the majesty of it all, and then what I'll do is, on coming back second time round, we'll take a closer look at a few things that, well, if you're looking now you'll already see. Right, so let's have a little walk around. So this priory, I'll give you a bit of background information, was supposed to have been built on a site back in 1094, which I'm not going to point out the obvious. I'm going downhill at the moment. This is the side of, well, I've just come down that hill there, so that is height level now, my head level I should say. That is my eye level, that graveyard I've just come from, right? So we'll just bear all that in mind when we look at this thing here and ponder how. Now to my left we have what I spoke about earlier, access to water. most definitely man-made, or let's say not natural. You can see it's been formed and worked on and all the rest of it, right? Nice little shady pathway to the left as well there. So there you have your river or your water. By the way, beyond those trees there, I don't know if you can see it because it is quite sunny, is a quay side with lots of yachts and boats parked up, moored. Right, now this is the thing. So you have, of course, your massive building that was built according to the history books in 1094, 11th century. It also allegedly took them 400 years to build. They continued building it into the 15th century on an old site from 800 AD. Now, the guy who commissioned, allegedly, this priory to be built in the 11th century was no other than the dean, I believe, of Twynham. And Twynham is a place I went to with a friend a few weeks ago to look at a village that I believe is just a stage set, but according to the history books was cleared in World War II to be repurposed by the military on the Jurassic coast in the south of England. It's the same place, Twynham. You know, when I talk about stage sets, I think that's a really valid point, because some of the ruins that you see are not actually really the ruins. They lead you into a false narrative. You know, oh, the Vikings were here, oh this, oh that, oh the other. Anyway, so getting back to this, the thing that I often get a little bit confused about is stuff like this. I was going to go round and then come back round and do a second one, but I won't. I'll just do it right now while I'm here, otherwise it'll take too long. So if we look at this here, a lot of this has been worked upon and added on, right? But even on the add-ons and the facelifts and all the rest of it, you have bricked up bits. So it's like they've left a bit that looks bricked up, like it is part of the process of refurbishment, if that makes even sense to what I'm saying now. I've explained it totally wrong, but I think you might get my drift, right? Then you have the usual thing with the windows and the frames, just on a larger scale, all eroding. You can see there the top of the window frame. Good morning, by the way, Dr. E. Vales. I'm not too sure if I'm saying your name correctly. I've never seen you before, but very kind of you to pop by. Very nice to have you here. Yeah, so you see there the framing that's used on this window, the large one, is very similar to what you see in all the other churches and stuff that we go up to with our thumbs and scratch away, and it breaks off and it's very brittle. But we keep making the point that they would never have built buildings to last using that material, right? But let's zoom in on what it says above. Now there is an explanation for what you're about to see here as well, because I looked it up, and because there was a lot of baffled people when they first came across this. But let's have a look here and I'll show you something. So to the right there, as you can see, there is a masked face looking down upon us. In the middle there's ER with a crown over it, that is signifying Elizabeth II's reign. The 2-1 signifying the 2, I believe that signifies something else. Also demonstrated on the front of Buckingham Palace, for example, the 2 pillars. And then you have 1, 2, 3 other heads on there, faces. They could be anybody. Now I've read up, and what's happened is that the face on the right there with the face mask is chiseled in there in memory of 2021 and the doctors and all the helpers that helped us through that time of need, right? So that's what that there for, and the description tells you online or wherever else you're looking that they've chiseled that in there because then it will stay there forever, kind of thing, for the next hundreds of years, you know, adding to the narrative that this is it's been here for basically 1,000 years, this building, right? Anyway, that's just a little bit of a side note there. I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, when you're looking at this here right in front of me, I find it interesting that they forge out a little bit of a hint that they've maybe picked up the door or window or whatever, but of course the whole touched up area is the same. So they've done it all and then made it look like they've bricked something up. But you don't have to look very far, and of course you can see it goes well down into the ground, and of course you don't really need to argue the point at all. It's right there. Right, so there is one side of it. Interesting. They'll always be there. Anyway, right, so I'm going to go this way. So here's one of the walls, and I'll take it around to the place that I looked at last time with Paul. Here, by the way, is your river or your stream or your canal, or whatever you want to call it, your waterway. And of course you've got a large wall there to the right of that water. So it's built on various levels, you know, which is very interesting. So I'm just basically trying to swing around from a different angle. In fact, I'm not going to do it like, I will do it like this. I will do it like this. Bear with me. I hope the stream remains with us. Right. So, you come down the bottom. I think I may have gone the wrong way, to be honest with you. So I'll try and find my way back up the top there. But while we're walking around here, look at all this stuff that surrounds this priory. You know. And this is, of course, all sloping down here. Built by the former governor of the Bank of England, I bet. I'm not going to up to the other side, and then we'll take a closer look. The flag, the Union flag that's on the top, is at half mast, and there is a bit of a remembrance thing going out on that side it. I shall be back there in a second. Okay, so on the site of an 800-year-old church, or AD 800 according to the history books, of course that would have been filed away and kept for keepsafing that date, wouldn't it, so that everybody can refer back to it and know exactly what they're on about, because it would have been so accurately recorded, probably on a bit of slate. Right, probably on a bit of slate. Right, I just went into the the cafe, actually. They do have a cafe in there. And I had a cup of tea, or what they call a pot of tea. It was like a bloody thimble. Nothing in it. I inhaled a bit too abruptly. Would have had to drink the stuff. But I'm not going to complain. It was all right. Quite nice. Okay, so here we are back at this end. What they do here is, this is what I was pointing out last time, is they leave bits, or they add 2 bits to create a narrative. In my opinion, this is in my opinion only, right? So nobody needs to shoot me down or go citations please or proof or whatever. You know what? We live in a world where you don't need much proof. I mean, I've been taught a load of stuff at school, and even to this day, I'm shouted at or insulted or whatever for not going along with, in my opinion, crazy ideas and crazy notions and conceptual stuff that's not even real. But yet I'm the madman. But when I bring into question things like this, nobody wants to listen, which is fair dues. But anomalous, these things will remain. But anyway, let's have a closer look at this. So you've got your wall, right? There's your Priory behind me. Behind that newer red brick building. I doubt very much that would have been there before they built the Priory, because it would have got in the way with all those horse and carts carrying all those rocks and stones that they quarried all those tens of miles away near Weymouth and got here on no train tracks, and with probably 10,000 rowing boats, because they would have needed a boat per block of rock for that weight, etc, etc, etc. But anyway, right, there's the Priory behind the churches, behind the trees and that building. And then just down the slope you have this, and this very reminiscent of, let's say, Corfe Castle, or even outside Salisbury Cathedral and those sorts of areas, or even just round the corner here there's a couple of ruins that I'm going to take a closer look at next time. But it's like they added it in for dramatic effect, to bolster basically a narrative, right? Yeah, there's a lot going on in that wall, isn't there? Because of course that building there, the Priory, is not built like this wall at all. Right, bear in mind what this looks like, and let's take a close-up view of this building. The Priory was supposed to have been built by the Normans. The Normans beat the Saxons, i.e. the Germans. So the Normans is code for the French, Saxons code for the Germans. Well, Saxony is Germany. I was born in Lower Saxony, which is where Hanover is, for example, right? It's Germany. And the Normans came over in their wooden boats and beat them in the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Notice the date. And then, the answer, no we don't. No, we totally different. So you got these sturdy supports that we saw on St James's Church when I was going around Boscombe a couple of days ago, right? And they look like most of these supports are actually below ground level, right? And it looks quite weak signal, I've been told. Mighty Atom, hello there, my friend. Hope you're well. Yeah, Dr. Evels, thanks for popping in. I'm not done with the tour at all yet. I'm just sort of feeling my way into it, looking for things. I've not come here pre-scripted or pre-prepared, because to be honest with you, I don't think we should be paying attention to the history books at all, really, at all. But that's just, again, my opinion. So we had this here, which is one thing we looked at last time, indicating a well. You see what I'm saying, with like there's much of it popping over above ground, you know what I mean? It's already kind of goes into the building, right? And then it starts getting wider here, and I'm pretty sure that goes much further deep down, and you can see it here, right? So if we take a look at that there, where the bottom of, well, it's not really the bottom, but for us it appears to be the bottom of that base that connects up with this part here, right? Right, so keep an eye on that there. Now let's have a look at the next one over, and you can see what I mean about how it actually gets wider. But again, you can see a lot of work here, there, and everywhere. And you know, I'll stick with my opinion on that as well, that I really do think they've done this to confuse the hell out of people, to not know what's come first, and this, that, and the other, right? Oh, that's good to hear, man. Got your coach parked up. Bit of a break. Good. Don't forget to have a Kit Kat. You would have missed it earlier, Mighty Atom, but I was mentioning about the masked up face that's been chiseled into the top of the Priory here, just like they used to do with the gargoyles and stuff like that, and the griffins and whatnot, right? And according to what I was reading up on, it is supposed to be in memoriam of those who helped us throughout the dreadful pandemic times that came so unexpectedly for us all, etc., right? So that's what that's there for, to commemorate the doctors and all those who helped us in our times of need. So I thought I would just mention that to you, my Atom, because I remember a little while back there were a few people asking about that, as if they'd uncovered some sort of sinister hidden meaning about, oh my god, you know, they've chiseled something that's wearing a mask on the church. What does that mean? Well, that's what it means. They're not hiding that. They're very open about that. All right. And again, here we have look at this here. I mean, what a hodgepodge of stuff, right? You've got ultra erosion here that they used to teach us in school was done by acid rain, which is why all our statues are eroding, right? That's what they used to teach us in school. But then, of course, you go here and you see the difference in the brickwork, the stonework. I mean, looking at that there, I can see 3 or 4 different. Well, I just seem to disappear then. I hope my connection is back. I don't know why it's that bad. Right. So here we go. Right, this is the other side, the other end to the one that I was showing you earlier with the wall and stuff like that that's sloping right down. Well, this is forget that. Did you not give him a clap? Right, so here we are on the other end. For whom the bells toll, eh? That indicates 3/4 past the hour. So nice little bit of trivia. There are 13 bells in this priory that is 311 feet tall. And I'm not saying pay necessarily attention to the numerology, but we know it has significance. Right, here we go again. Here is this thing whereby, yeah, before the days of porridge and all that, people were so much smaller that's what explains all these very narrow entrances. Right? You see them in a lot of English towns, and Scottish, British towns in general. In any of these European towns, you see a lot of these entrances, and the explanation: people were less nourished, far worse off, blah 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 blah. Basically, we were all midgets. And then somebody decided to say eat some fruit and this, that, and the other, and suddenly they thought, oh, we're going to have to enlarge the entrances to all our buildings. All right. Thank you, Mighty. That is more like it. Come on, you've got to show your appreciation. You know, the cynical enough, my friend. Right? You know the score. You know the score. Okay. So we have our teeny tiny entrance there. Look at that. Lovely picture of contrast there, isn't it? So the helpers 1/3 of the size of the priests. Are they even priests that run priories, or are they called something else?
It's an ordinary parish church.
It's a priory.
Yeah, not anymore.
But it's still called the Christchurch Priory, though, right? So why is it called a priory if it's not actually functioning as a priory, just out of interest?
Because it used to.
Because it used to?
Yes. But the monastery's gone. The last prior was Henry VIII.
The last prior was Henry VIII, and then after that it got stopped used as a priory officially. And it can only be used as a priory if there's a monastery active, is that correct?
The priory's usually got it's a monastery.
Interesting. Okay, and I found out now about why there was the thing chiselled.
Church of the Holy Trinity, but it's always been known as Christchurch Priory.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, priory. And I never understood why they call this a priory, even though it's the size of a cathedral, for example. You know.
Well, it's not a cathedral because we don't have a bishop.
No, I know, but you don't have a bishop because there's no cathedral.
No.
So which way round is it?
A cathedral has a cathedra, which is the bishop's seat.
I thought a cathedral had to do with a cathode, which is to do with electricity, but then I'd be on the wrong track.
Cathedra, which is the bishop's throne in the church.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The Christchurch Priory was given to the parish of Christchurch.
Yes.
In perpetuity by Henry VIII.
Henry VIII. That's interesting.
Because it was the only parish church in the area when they came to destroy the monastery.
Well, allegedly they did, didn't they, throughout the country? Allegedly. I mean, I wasn't around to see that, but allegedly that's what we were told, yeah.
They destroyed the monastery. All the remains are...
Okay.
It's raised.
And what about the Dean of Twynham that's mentioned, where that little village is that the military took back in World War II?
No idea about that.
That's very interesting. I came across that earlier.
No idea about that. But,
okay. Because it was built, they started rebuilding it in 1094, right?
Yep.
On an 800-old site. AD 800.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Okie dokie, thank you very much. Have a good day. There you go, Henry VIII was involved. The guy who went round with all his merry men burning down monasteries or razing them to the ground, allegedly, that's what we're told, which is why we're told there are so many ruins throughout the UK, is because of Henry VIII. Again, of course, a thing that you cannot verify at all. I'm not going to spend too much time showing you that, you know what all that's about. Right, so, continuing with this, that was quite interesting. So that lady was listening into what I was saying there and then added her bit. She obviously knew her stuff a little bit, according to the history books, she knew her stuff. But there we go. Henry VIII. All roads lead to that which you cannot validate or prove. Oh dear. Right, anyway, so let's take a look a bit closer to this, right, at this I should say. So yeah, find these little things here dotted around, printed in the side of the wall here, there and everywhere. There's another example there, right? What is that all about? You know, you got your different coloured stones and rocks down here, then you got your concrete here, and of course that goes well down. There's my feet. Yeah, that goes well. See, here we go from the other side. There you can see those supports again, how thick they are, right? You know, and they will go down very deep into the ground. They will. So there's a lot of work's been done on this, a lot of adding on has been done on this, a lot of masonry work has been done after the fact, either to preserve it or to make it look older in certain places or whatever. This is also quite interesting. I mean, look at this. What would this shape be useful for? These cylindrical, circle, cylindrical, cube, circle, square shapes, I wonder. Lots of theories, including battery cell type situations for electric electricity and whatnot. Because, of course, we have to bear in mind, well, we don't have to do anything, but I would suggest we bear in mind that these buildings were never intentionally, originally anyway, constructed as churches, as houses of worship. They just weren't. That's what I'm getting at with my videos. You wouldn't have had the population. This was supposed to have been built in 1094. Think about that. Think about that. 1094. The Salisbury Cathedral was supposed to be 800 years old. You know, 1094 this was supposed to be built. Just give that some thought. It's absolutely mental that anybody would even entertain that as even a smidgen of truth. Right? I mean, just look at the work. How were you getting any of this from where you needed it up here before any of this was stood around? 1,000 years ago, you didn't have all these houses. You didn't have this, did you? You didn't have you didn't have the graveyard, because the graveyard would have developed into part of the church with time. Right? So what would this have all been? All trees right next to water? It just beggars belief. It just doesn't make sense on any level that you think about it. But of course, we have to rid ourselves of that default that we have, that default setting of, if in doubt, side with the books, with the authorities. They know best. They would know, wouldn't they? Well, no. Yeah, you can have what we call flying monkeys. That is, they will carry out their roles and not really know about what the actual truth is. They think they're actually just, you know, continuing that message in good faith. But here we have it again. There's another example. Right? All around this priory, you've got bits like this. Your window with your very brittle framework. Very brittle. You've got your vents there, your vents outside the window there. Cooling systems, question mark. Right? Then you've got different types of bricks to that. So it's almost like that they've combined the old and the new to do the add-ons, I would say. And then, of course, you know, we know it goes deep down into the ground. There is evidence galore around here. We don't have to really highlight that. What I'm trying to highlight is people getting the understanding of the impossibility of what we're told happened. Right? That is what needs to sink in. That is really, honestly, what needs to sink in. Now, let's have a look at this here. Again, people were midgets back in the day. Right? I mean, I'm 6'1", just about. Maybe in 10 years' time that might change, but right? That is literally coming up to my eyebrows. There, that's my eye height there. I mean, I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not small, but I'm also not massive. But I would struggle to get through that entrance. Right? There's stuff here that people, I don't know why they're not looking at this going, well, what did people have at their disposal 1,000 years ago? Well, let's not even bother looking 1,000 years. Let's look 250 years. Let's go back to the 1870s, shall we? The 1770s, I should say. Right? Did we have any rail networks that could have been used to support all this? No. The first rail network was laid in 1825 from Stockton to Darlington, and it was wooden tracks for coal transportation. Humans were transported with horse-drawn carriages. Don't believe me? Look it up. It's there in black and white. That's the stuff that kids learn and students learn to then become historians. Okay, right, so we've come back around this side again. As you can see, the difference in height is absolutely astounding. Again, you know, it raises the question of where do you even start with this? And I think that's why they mess around with it so much and do bits and bobs to it all over the place. I think that's the reason why. But yeah, interesting it is, no doubt. But you have some shapes there that, you know, you think to yourself, yeah, they got a practical use of some sort. You know, even when you look at this here, you have these, they're like, I guess nowadays they would call them lookout posts for your soldiers with their bows and arrows. Well, guess what? If I'm approaching the coast on my fleet of ships about to invade England, then I might just avoid where the fortress is and just maybe invade the country a mile further down the coast. And then that way they ain't going to get me with their bow and arrows. They can be stuck in their church all day or in their castle all day long if they want to and still invade the country and starve you out. It's ridiculous. It would take you 30 years just to build a part of this. By that time, I've taken over your country, sorted out your family, flattened your villages, changed the language, changed your religious beliefs, everything else. It's so easily done. Nah, these were never, ever, ever made as fortresses. Castles weren't, and neither were these fortress-looking bits that are on the tops of churches, so-called, and cathedrals and priories and whatnot, and minsters and munsters and goodness knows what else, right? Nah, and they're not just decorative either. They served a purpose, but it wasn't for the defence of our realm or anything like that. There's something going on. No doubt about that for me. Now, if we zoom in here, this is something I mentioned a few weeks back on another video. They often leave little nuggets of information on things like that. You might not see it on the camera, but it does say 1928 on there. Well, I'm sure this drain was produced in 1928 in a factory somewhere. Absolutely. That's about right. But what's behind it? No. No. There we have those thin slit windows again, as you can see there. You know, that'll really help the archer when he's trying to hit his men, isn't he? He's not going to give him much of a view, a peripheral view. He might get hit from an angle. But anyway, that is quite interesting. So 1928 on the guttering there, and at the top there, top left. I can't zoom in anymore, but on the top of that guttering it also says 1928, and there is a cat's head above it, I do believe. Anyway, all the guttering has 1928 written on it. And of course, our old favourite that is also depicted is the gargoyle, and of course the rose inside another rose, which for me demonstrates or symbolises frequencies of some sort. I don't think it's anything to do with royal pageantry or anything like that. I think that's just been hijacked like all the other symbols, like the you know, the fleur-de-lis and all that sort of stuff that symbolises something totally different to what we're told. Yeah. So although it's a massive building and you're kind of looking at it go, oh yeah, I could spend all day talking about this, but in actual fact, when you look at it, it's no real different. Yeah, there are some bits and bobs that are maybe slightly different details here or there, but it's no different to the storyline you find everywhere else with all these so-called cathedrals and whatnot, right? Evidence of mud flood, evidence of add-ons galore, evidence of renovation and the touching up of it. Yeah, I mean, according to the narrative as well, the original roof is on here. That's 1,000 years old. I thought roofs always burn down, or is this the next one to burn at some point? Because it's so old and they've kept that one for a rainy day, as it were. Because they all tend to die a ritualistic demise, or find themselves in a ritualistic demise. Alright? Like Windsor Castle, like Notre Dame. We look back in all the history books, a lot of these buildings burnt, didn't they? Well, there you have it, really. That is Christchurch Priory. Quite a building, lots of bits and bobs going on. But one thing is for sure, people on rowing boats didn't pop over from Germany after a long voyage with nothing to eat, no below deck cabins, no decent food, no tin food, nothing like that, no medical help, no nothing. We're talking the year 1000 here roughly, right? And yet they popped over with all the expertise in the world to do this. No, sorry, I will forever refute that. Absolute nonsense. But a beautiful building, nevertheless. A beautiful building, nevertheless. And you know, afternoon.
Afternoon.
You know, there's nothing wrong with having a gorgeous building, and it's good to make use of these green specks in the town and have people walking around and enjoying the fresh air and all the rest of it. But, you know, no such thing as a free dinner, is there? You're always going to get something that's given to you for your way, for on your way. One of them here is the false narrative. Yeah. So when you come here and hold hands with your kids, and let's say I came here with my daughter one day and I said, I want to show you the Priory in Christchurch, let's just say that, and I come here and she has questions about this, right? Well, those of us with kids, what answers do you give your kids when you're showing them this and you know you're aware of the official narrative, but you're maybe not too sure how to break it to your daughter or your son, how to say it, how to explain it, what's the best way to get into that conversation, you know, etc., etc. My daughter's 12. You know, when is the right age to drip feed them with the alternatives to what they're taught? You know, because every time a grown-up comes here with a child or whatever, the child will have questions, because children do. Now, what do you answer them? What do you tell them? Anyway. And of course, these buildings wouldn't be these buildings without, of course, the influence of octagonal shaped things like that clock. Anyway. Yeah, so it's always worth thinking about when, you know, when we do things and take a look at stuff. There's nothing wrong with telling them the truth, or at least your opinion. Why not? You're allowed to tell them. You don't have to walk around with a history book, go, well, it says this, but I think it's this. No. You can look at something and go, well, does that make sense to you? Because it sure doesn't make sense to me. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with sharing that curiosity? That's the way we should go about it. We're curious. I am. I'm intrigued. And of course, it takes you then straight to the next question, which is, I'm also very intrigued as to why they would lie. I really am. What is it they're hiding? They're hiding something. They must be. They obviously are. But you know, it's like, well, you know. Yeah, and it's reminiscent. You just look after. All you have to do is look at the pictures of the Houses of Parliament in London or anything like that, and these are the shapes you see. That tower right in front of you with the vents above the clock. 13 bells it's got in there. 311 feet tall. You just got from Germany. You fought a battle. You're wearing leather sandals. You've maybe got a spear, maybe a bow and arrow. You can't talk the language because, I mean, what language were the Saxons talking about then, or the Normans? Who knows? I wasn't around. So they popped over here. They made it all the way to Christchurch, which is quite far. You would have just popped over from Calais to Dover, really. But anyway, they made it all the way to here. And then decided to build these things. Sorry. Nope. All right. I think I made my point on that. While we're at it, we may as well then continue to have a little look. To be honest with you, I've actually had enough of looking at the Priory, because yes, big and spectacular in a sense, but it's like average paintings. When you get up close, you realise all the flaws. Anyway, so there we go. There's Christchurch Priory. That I'm going to listen back to what the lady said, but what did she say? It's not called a priory, it's not used as a priory unless the monastery is in use, and that wasn't in use until since Henry VIII. Henry VIII, of course, was around in the 1500s, which is when this thing was completed, allegedly. Right? They were supposed to begin building this. Bit of globage there. They began building this in the 11th century, allegedly, and was then completed in the 1500s. Now explain to me this, why would you raise buildings to the ground like Henry VIII and his merry men allegedly did? Why wouldn't you just repurpose them, like we know has happened anyway? Ooh, and buildings wouldn't be the same without pillars, would they? Hey? Church Watch, that's called, that house, number 13. Interesting. Right, so let's have a little look through Christchurch then. I'll keep it to, well, I'll try and keep it away from all the traffic. I want to take you to a place that I was looking at last time. There's another spire in the distance there, because that's what you would do. You would knock up a priory, then while you're knocking up that priory, you would also knock up buildings at the other end of town and all sorts of other things. I mean, it's just absolute madness. Absolute madness. In fact, I'm going to take you straight there. I'm not going to bother looking at the ruins because I've said it last time. For me, they're stage sets. They are not real. They're there to conceal the pyramids that they're built on. That's as far as I'm concerned. So just trying to get over this street without getting run over. But there are some very interesting buildings down here. I'll show you. As I go on the other side of the street. So this is one way of seeing Christchurch, that's for sure. On a busy day, busy-ish. It's Friday, so we're preparing for the weekend, especially this weekend. Bear in mind, it's a long weekend. Monday is a day of mourning here in the UK. Everything will be shut because it's the monarch's funeral. Oh, I'm getting the looks, blimey. So, let's have a look down this street here. This is quite a nice place, it's called the Ship. Right, so I walked down here earlier when I was on my way to the Priory. Again, everywhere you look, all uneven. The ground is all uneven. You know, clearly mud flooded, if you want to call it that. Again, I'm not too keen on that phrase. I don't like Tartaria as a description or as a subject matter title. It just, I don't know, it's too general for me. Okay, so let's have a look down here. This church, by the way, let me just have a look, see what this is called. It's called Christchurch Christian Centre, in fact. It's not even a church, which is quite interesting. So this, again, it proves the point of what we were talking about you can literally repurpose buildings into anything you want, whether it's a Tesco or whether it's a so-called Christian centre. All you have to do is add the word Christian centre to it, and then hey presto, you got something. But what I did notice with this, and I'd like you to pay a bit of attention to this and maybe look this up. Again, I have to keep saying look it up because I don't have the equipment set up to be able to just screen share stuff with you, which is what I eventually want to do when I do this stuff in future. But anyway, look at this. I'm going to zoom in. See those 3 circles there? Would you say they link with each other? Do they look like they're 3 rings linking up? I personally think that's exactly what it looks like. So maybe go and check out something called Odd Fellows. It's a society within the Masonic setup. They, on research, owned and financed most, if not all, of the so-called big goods. Hiya. Good, thank you. Well, yeah, I'm sort of talking about it a little bit. See,
I see it in the mirror, and that's very amazing.
You what? Sorry.
I see, you can see it from the mirror when the thing's done. You see it from the mirror.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Cool. There's an organisation called Odd Fellows, and what they did was they were almost like, I would say, the financial arm of the Masonic setup back in the day when they were purposing, founding, inheriting and repurposing these buildings. So if you go and delve a little bit, you'll see that a lot of the old so-called asylum buildings and clinics, we would call them today, and all that sort of stuff, and also yeah, things like that, right? They were all financed by Odd Fellows. So, and their symbol are 3 interlinking chains. So I thought that might be interesting to look up, because Odd Fellows is something that doesn't get mentioned a lot. I have seen a couple of content creators delving in a little bit deeply on that topic. But yeah, the 3 rings are often a giveaway to that, who's behind it. At least the refurbishing, the facelifting, and certainly the repurposing of these buildings. This one looks in a bit less good shape as some that I've seen. Yeah, again, from a distance it looks okay. When you get up close, it's crumbling quite a bit. I'll give you an example. And there you can see, right, so you got your cladding outside that's been made of not very good material. Very clever, because that way it'll erode quicker and look old quicker, which will then suit the old narrative much better, right? So you got that's cladding. I mean, you can feel that's not very solid at all. Then you have this here, which is also cladding. Look at the thickness of it. Okay, you've got then the original, well, I say the original, there's some brickwork here, and then you've got, of course, to connect the ground level that I'm stood on with the raised floor level of this Christian centre, that of course was never a Christian centre when it was first built, to then get up into the building. You have windows at awkward heights. That is the height of the bottom of my rib cage here, okay? And then again, you've got the same thing, the same spiel going on here. In the meantime, the ground is going down there. And then again, you've got your concrete here, probably Portland cement. Like I say, patented in 1829. Wouldn't have been up and running and supplied in anything like that until the mid to late 1800s. Just for logistical purposes, that would not have worked. And then, of course, you have, again, you're alluding to the pillars, and also the arches, which of course are very prominent in a lot of the buildings, the arch shaped entrances and stuff. And then of course here you have like a, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, with a date on it, and it says 1867. Or does it? Because you've got the 1, 8 and 7 all jumbled up. Right, but again, very, very cheap, very nasty. not built to last. That's not to say that they took some of these bricks maybe that were originally kind of used. It's good material. It's certainly different to this stuff. And then of course you've got the same spiel here. And you've got the ground level going down. They've had to raise the ground a little bit here to not make that look too drastic. But then, yeah. Let's not worry too much about what the checkered floor means, even though it's red and white. But let's have a look over here and see the symbolism above the window on the left. Not too sure what that means. If anybody knows, do let me know. I mean, is that two entwining what? Numbers of infinity? Are they two number 8s depicted there? Are they two 1s going through the two 8s? I mean, what is being depicted there? What is that? Anybody know that? I've never seen that one before. I've seen a lot of them, but I've not seen that. I've seen things like acorns being depicted and pines and all that sort of stuff, but and numbers, of course. But that, interesting. Okay. Then of course you got this where, you know, we know this has been raised up, and yet this is the bottom. It's been raised up, and I'm stood on the bottom of this entrance, which is twice my height, and that's standing on a ground that's been raised, right? So you can go down another, I don't know, I would say probably the height of this building goes down there again. That's my personal view on it. From what I've seen now up to now in this whole area in Bournemouth and stuff like that, the amount of levels, you know, I've ended up going down around the back of buildings and seeing them from the front. You know, it's like, and then we have, of course, a bit of metalwork on the top there with some vents, because of course you'd need a vent in your church, wouldn't you? In a building that's bloody freezing anyway. You'd need a cooling system to, you know, have the congregation who are sat nice and cozy and comfortably on their wooden planked pews. Yeah, you're going to need vent systems for that, aren't you? And have people really die of hypothermia. No, nonsense. Nonsense. Anyway, there we have it. Again, a nice little, you know, so you know, you're building this as well as the stuff that's in the background over there that I now can't see because there's trees in the way. Right, I'm actually not going to go that way. I'm going to go the back way, but I can't be bothered walking past people who are staring at me like I shouldn't be holding a camera. What is that? I bet if I had a BBC badge on, they'd all be sniffing around me. Okay, let's go. I don't even know where that takes us. Probably nowhere. Let's try this one here. There we go. I went the wrong way. The wrong side of the wall. And then we have, of course, the gable. So there, it's quite a big building. There's a lot to it. Bit of a graveyard outside the front, just to validate its existence. And then we have things like this here, where you can clearly see that something used to rest on it. Remember when I used to say about things like red bricks, how they fade if they've been covered for long periods of time with cladding? Same goes for here. If they've been covered for long periods of time with anything, you'll see a difference in the colouring. Again, an oversized entrance, far too high, that's been closed off. Yeah. Christian Centre. Very, very interesting. And then of course when you come around the back, what is also very interesting is the revelation, excuse the pun, wasn't really intended, of brickwork, because we are now on the back of that Christian centre. And look at what we find here. And I think this is what we're talking about. When we talk about buildings that have been clad and stuff like that, well, that is what they're concealing. Don't know if you can see that. Look at that brickwork. That is original. Very rare to see that, but that is original. So they've kept the cladding to the front where people are likely to see it, and they've left the original out the back. There we have it. I'm going to move away from here because I'm stood right outside the toilets as well. People think I'm zooming in on them when they're coming out with the paper towels in their hands. Not cool. Right, there we have it. Now I'm in a place called Saxon Square, which is in Christchurch, of course. But we're going to ignore Saxon Square for the moment, and we're going to have a little look at one or two little nuggets. May as well, while we're here. So first of all, let's take a look at this. So this is Saxon Square Shopping Centre. This is the building that they've put to kind of, or use to demonstrate. This is the entrance of it. This was opened in 1983. I was 10 years of age. Yeah. There you can see the top of that church is clearing out there. Hey, look at the length of that spire. Why? Unbelievable. And again, you've got the octagonal shape, by the way, around the clock. You can count the edges. Interesting. Right, so let's continue here. And let's have a look at this here. First thing I see is probably the first thing you see. Let's have a quick look. This, of course, is a bank. Yeah. It's a bank, and it's right next to probably the most obvious bit of symbolism you're ever going to see from a mainstream institution to tell us what's going on. Look at that symbol of that bank. What do you think that looks like? Put that on a face staring at you. You know what I mean? Alright. Anyway, this building always has interested me, even before I kind of woke up to the fact that we've been lied to about the origins of our buildings, along with everything else. Take a look at this. So you got that there on the top. All sorts going on there. They've left the metalwork. They've got definitely the, I don't know what that is on top. It's definitely not, obviously not a flagpole. It's not how you're building. That is antiquity of sort. Again, I'm using words that I might be misusing, but let's just call it metalwork. So it's definitely, I say definitely, I've not been up there to touch it. It might be made of wood that looks like metal. Don't know. I mean, would you have guessed that St. Paul's Cathedral's dome is made of wood? No. There you go. So, you know. But nevertheless, there is some intricate work on the top, and it is in the shape of a dome, and it is on the corner of a building that's rondale, roundish, octagonal, round shaped. Again, we have this cladding over the corners. Like I said, I guarantee there'll be red bricks underneath that cladding, just like in Boscombe. If you took the cladding away, those segments, those curved segments, you took that off, you'd find bricks underneath, and they would all be grey in colour because of the, you know, Anyway, I thought that was interesting. And again, of course, mud flood everywhere you look. So you have here history of prism lighting, which indicates underground basements or windows. You'd never build buildings with windows underground. That's nonsense, but for some reason they always did a couple of hundred years ago. You wouldn't do that. And this here, you see a lot of this where they've covered stuff up. Yeah. But they cover it up in such a way that it can be found. A bit like when NASA make their mistakes, for example, leaving glasses of water on the stage set when they're allegedly hurtling around the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. They do that on purpose. They do that on purpose. It's not us being clever and intelligent and observant. No. They leave it there for us to find. That's how that works. That's how that game works. Anyway, so there you have it. The banks and etc. They seem to be the ones that occupy these, let's say, significant buildings. Let's call them that, significant. Christchurch is a very interesting place. The demographics here are a bit different to Bournemouth, certainly different to Boscombe. I used to help out in a drop-in centre here in Christchurch a few years ago. You know, every town and village or whatever has their issues: homelessness, alcohol, drugs, crime in general, whatever. But here, it's a higher standard of criminal, it's a higher standard of problem. You know, anybody over the age of 65, 70 here has probably more than likely got a yacht, and all that. You know, could be further, could be more different to Boscombe, where you're lucky to find everybody owning a bike. I actually missed, by the way, the thing on the top of the entrance to the Saxon Square. So there you have it, another dome, and there we have our church again in the background with that tall steeple, which seems to be the tallest building here in the area. So clearly that is a building of significance. Maybe the dome was in support of that, one of many, an infrastructure of a network of dome-like constructions that were there to support that. You know, I'm not too sure. I'd have to plot it all on a map, which again is something I want to do eventually. And you know, try and work out maybe some patterns, try and maybe look at old maps of the area and connect them up, old streams, old rivers, whatever. But something connects all this, there's no doubt about that, for me. People don't just throw these buildings up and that's that. So, you know. Right, let's continue up this street. As you can see, palm trees we have growing here. They do grow here naturally, by the way. No one's come along and planted them or anything like that. They actually do grow here. So I'm not going to go too much out my way here, because it is a busy time right now as well. Like I said, there's a long weekend coming up. The shops are going to be closed on the Monday. There's a royal wedding. I nearly said a royal funeral, I meant royal wedding. See, this is the thing, I'm so used to authorities just throwing out a royal wedding if they need the people distracted, but of course you can throw out a funeral as well here or there. Only you can't do funerals as often. Well, I guess you could, but you know. So there we have that. There we have that. Very, very interesting. Red House, let's go down there. So I'll take you down here. Here's one of those parks that I told you about a couple of days ago that was an initiative by, you're welcome, an initiative by the Victorians, you know, to give people a little bit of a holiday within their cities and towns that they worked and toiled in. Don't forget, not only were they malnourished and about 2 foot tall, the people back then, so they needed really, really tiny entrances to the houses because the people were so thick. They didn't think that maybe they'll get better with time when we develop more better foods and all that sort of stuff. Well, no. They just build their entrances in these massive buildings, 3 foot tall, and decide that's the size, and we'll keep it like that. And then, yeah, all a bit bizarre. But again, look, evidence of mud flood everywhere you look. Mud flood. Nah, got to think of something else. Another word to describe that. I don't like that. Mud flood and Tartary, I'm afraid. They're the two I'm going to have to work on. In terms of phrasing something. God, if I lived like, when I was a kid, if we would have had that sort of space to play in nearby, I'd have been there every day for hours with the football, no doubt. Soccer ball, sorry. Okay, well, I'm not going to keep walking all the way down there because that will take you elsewhere. But I'm not too sure if I'm going the right way. We'll give it a go and see where it takes me. And if not, then, you know, in fact, I'm not going to go down there. It's a long walk down there. Let's leave that. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because what they'll do is they've layered on history upon history. So you've got something like Christchurch, for example, who's allegedly given its name to the town Christchurch in New Zealand, right? And that is as far as our historians or our history books will tell us we need to go. Well, no, that's just all made up, isn't it? Yes, actually, that might be true that some Brits, whatever, who occupied that part of New Zealand, they were given the order to change the name to Christchurch to fill in the gaps. That's where we came from in England, and so we'll call this town that in New Zealand, a bit like what they did with Plymouth and goodness knows all the other towns, Boston, Washington, whatever, you name it, right? But of course, it's not the real deal. It's not really what's happening. You know, the British did not turn up on the shores of New Zealand or Australia and then suddenly start building massive buildings everywhere in all the modern day cities we find there now. Australia would be, you know, Melbourne, Adelaide, and all these places. Look at some of the old stuff. Go and check out Campbell's channel, Autodidactic, and look at the stuff that he's looking at down under, as they call it. Right? It's absolutely astounding. You're not going to do that when you've got a small population that's just getting started. You're just not going to. Impossible. You know, think of where, not just the British, by the way, but, you know, anybody else who was supposed to have gone abroad and then influenced a part of the world with their traditions and their language. Let's use Brazil, for example, with their Portuguese, right? Now, do you think if you went to Brazil, you'll find a load of massive old buildings? Yeah, of course you will. So who are you going to attribute that to? Well, it can only be the Portuguese settlers that you can attribute that to. You're not going to attribute it to the tribes of the jungle that we're led to believe were all that the Brazilians were before the Portuguese got there. That's all nonsense. That's all absolute nonsense. Same with the French. Same with the Dutch. Same with the Germans, same with the Belgic, same with the Scandinavians with the nonsense Viking stories, same nonsense. Large rowing boats they were, nothing more than that. How were you getting across the Atlantic in a boat like that? I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm saying the chances are you're going to die of something, because that's a long old voyage. Anyway, you know, all these backup stories that we have about how places came about and how things were built, you know, it's like people just do not see the wood for the trees anymore. Poignant that I'm pointing the camera where I am, isn't it? But they just don't. They just don't see it anymore, and so what they tend to do is just give up and go, oh, I don't really care. I just want to get on with my life and have peace and quiet and some serenity. Yeah. Absolutely, but while I've got the energy, and not just myself, I'm sure I speak for a lot of other people, you know, while I have the energy and a voice and the motivation to talk about it and do something about it, however small my channel is or however insignificant my voice in the corner of our community may be, then I'm going to use it. Absolutely. And things like this need highlighting, and they need highlighting very, very often. Hence why I talked about the kids earlier and stuff. You know, you go in there with your kids hand in hand and you approach a Priory, a massive size building like that, and they ask you simple questions. How are you answering them? Are you going to go with mainstream? Are you going to start by saying, well, the officials say this, but bear this in mind? You know, but we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. That's why the tour that we had July, August worked so well, because we offered all topics, because it's all connected. All of it is connected. The lie itself is massive. You know? And also, like I said in an earlier video, you know, it's taken me a while. I'm right at the beginning of my journey in terms of, you know, getting my head around all of this. Just the magnitude of the lie alone blows my mind. Just blows my mind. Never mind anything else. That's where my enthusiasm comes from, and my passion. Is the intrigue, the sheer, you know, aghastness of the efforts that's been made to you know, deceive us, totally and utterly deceive us, mislead us, wrongly guide us, and all that. You know, I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, I often spill my opinion on a live walk like I'm doing now, because I've got an alternative. I could go home and talk to the mirror, or the cats. We have 2 cats in the house. I could talk to them. Don't think they're too bothered. You know, who do you talk to about this? It's not. You know, I could talk about this stuff all day, or listen to people talk about it all day, because it's so, there's so much to digest and kind of, like I said, get your head round. Really. There is a lot to it. Oh. Bon appetit. Welcome. I wasn't pointing the camera at you, by the way. Cool. Wanted to disturb someone having their lunch there. Yeah, so, you know, when there's a lot to see. That, yes, a lot of it has been, of course, spruced up, and we all know, even mainstream people, thinking people know that we've built upon, and there are levels to towns and cities, and archaeologists find things under the topsoil and all that. But again, they're just safe investigations. It's a bit like believing in certain agendas or fighting certain causes. They're safe causes. I want to get to the nitty gritty of it. I don't want to be told that a black life matters. I know it does. Right? I don't want to be told that every single person, every soul on this earth is unique and special, and has, in my opinion, the right, as long as it causes no harm to anybody else or themselves, the right to live how they wish. Right? I don't need authority to tell me that. Yet it's propagated and thrown out in the media like we really need those messages. But of course we don't. Just like we didn't need certain other things that we told we required in the last few years, right? And the same goes for this is where it starts. Schools, history books. This is where that starts. Well, it starts actually with lying about Santa and stuff. But you know, it starts at the early ages, and we have an opportunity to counteract and counterbalance that. Give it some counter noise. You know, we really must. We really must. I ain't going down quietly. Well, there's no going down about it anyway, is there? Who's going down or who's going up? There's nothing, it's not. You use your observations and you follow up on them. And you pay attention to yourself. Anyway. These palm trees are real. No add-ons here. Beautiful day, isn't it? Lovely when you get the contrast. And even there, that building in the background, the grey brick building, you know, old. You'd expect to find these sorts of buildings in the industrial heartlands of the north, the centre of England, you know, the Midlands and the north of England. You know, I remember mentioning this a while back when we went to Birmingham. Birmingham in England, that is, Birmingham. Birmingham is an amazing city when it comes to brick buildings. I mean, just mind-blowing. Just absolutely mind-blowing. You know, the official story just doesn't do it justice. You know, just doesn't do it justice. Yeah. And that's why I do things like put these videos out and do my news segments and throw out some montages and such like of photos of some music and go on tours and try and get messages out to people. That's why I do that. For me, I cannot just sit on something and not talk to someone about it or get a message of some sort out. It's impossible, right? Can't do it. But there you go. Right, I'm going to cross the road here because I need to go over to Bargate, which is around the corner. It's where I used to work, actually. And then I shall probably proceed to get some transport back to Boscombe. So what happened was I left the house this morning because my landlady, Anne, she wanted to come into Christchurch. She likes Christchurch. She comes here a lot. She's got friends here and stuff like that. And I said, well, that's good, because I actually wanted to go to Christchurch to do a bit of a live stream and just have a little look around if the weather's okay. So I hopped on the bus with her, and she went one way, and I went off and did this. So there we have it. There's the background as to why I'm here. A few miles down the road from Boscombe. Yeah. It's funny, many years ago I went to a city called Dusseldorf in Germany. I'd just returned back to England, not that you all want to know my life story, but I just returned back to England having lived in Germany for 20 odd years for personal reasons. And but when I went back to Dusseldorf on one of those return visits to see my daughter, there was a church there called Christchurch on the River Rhine, and it was an English or British community church. Expats had set it up. But when I think back to it again, the building was repurposed. You could have that church that they have there on the side of the river, on the riverbank. Sorry, you could put that here in the middle of Christchurch, and it wouldn't raise an eyebrow. You know, again, you're seeing the same architecture everywhere. As we know, that's one of the main arguments, isn't it? How did they get those ideas and thoughts to each other across thousands of miles of ocean when you're looking at the similarities of a lot of the architecture, right? But of course there are different segments of similarities, if I'm even saying that right. So you've got like you know, similarities in terms of what they call Tartarian, like, you know, your onion dome buildings. You have them everywhere. You have them in Austria, you have them in Moscow, you have them in India, you have them in the Middle East, you have them in England, you know, that sort of thing. Just looking across the road here. Right. That's where I used to help out in there. And this is a bus stop, obviously. Yeah. So again, you know, on entering this town, the first thing you see at the bottom of the road, you see in the distance there, is the Priory. And I think personally, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I think personally they've taken something off that roof and they've added a flatter roof to it. Just like they do with the water towers. I'm pretty sure that they've taken something off the water towers, told us it's a water tower. Of course it's not. You don't contain water in a massive big brick building. How are you going to get it in there? What for? Etc, etc. I'm not going to go into those arguments now. But yeah, I think there's something missing off the top of those. It looks like a plinth with something missing. That's why you'll see churches, in my opinion, by the way, only in my opinion, you'll see a lot of churches, even in Bournemouth, everywhere. Some will have spires, some without. But if you imagine all with spires or all without spires, they'd all be the same, almost, right? Anyway. yeah, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to. You okay, love? You okay?
Oh, you were talking to me.
Oh, I'm amazed you heard me amongst that traffic. Yeah, that was really strange. I was walking behind this woman. She suddenly just turned round. Bless. What was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, in light of a lot of things that have happened recently and stuff like that, you know, I just can't seem to digest it all quickly enough. It's going to take me a little bit of time to get my head around all of this, you know. Bit of Art Deco there. But yeah. Yeah, did we think we get lied to here or there in the history books? Yes. Did we fall for these stupid sayings that people like Napoleon, fictional characters, you know, inserted into our history books? You know, did we believe all that and fall for that? Yes. Shakespeare, Goethe, Schiller, Tolstoy, Victor Hugo, all these propaganda writers of the past. Let's not even talk about the science stuff, so-called science stuff. So here we go again, right, so at the top of this road here, or halfway up before the bridge, on the right hand side, we have a building. They've painted it red and white on the front, and the date on top is 1902, which again is the day of cladding, not the day of building. You know, when you clad a building, it means you're cladding it on top of something that's already there. That's what cladding is. You don't build a building made of cladding. Well, you can, but it ain't going to last you very long. You saw that with the brittleness of the buildings earlier. I hope you're hearing what I'm saying, because it is quite windy. It is quite windy. So that Indian cuisine place there on Fairfield, standard Bengal it's got on the window. Again, a rather old building, and again you've got that surface area on the top in the shape of a ball. And then you've got signage there on top of the bricks where there probably used to be something depicted there. Or, you know, you always see those toroidal, or those two vortexes, left and right, right? So you've got your ball there, your sphere, and then below it, well, look at the sphere. The sphere is on a pillar, if you like, and then on top of that, it's on a square, flat base. So there you got your sphere and your cube, or your circle and your square, and then to the left and the right of that, below that, you've got your I don't know what you would call that. You call that a vortex. You know, the thing that was missing after the planes hit certain buildings, which prove unequivocally that no planes were ever involved, because the flames would have been drawn round in a circular motion, vortex style. But that is what you're seeing there, and that's why a lot of people are drawing the conclusion that that has to do with energy, or is depicting or symbolising the fact that we have that technology in the past. Maybe even still using it now. Maybe the rest of it is just all for, again, for our distraction. Who knows? And does it change anything? Nah, not really. Not in practical terms it doesn't, but in knowledge terms and all that, yes it does. And increasing your awareness as to what's going on, yeah, absolutely it does change something. Okay, so now we've seen that on this side, let's take a look at the other side. And this is quite interesting, because look at what they've done here. Now that looks like not an old building, right? But they've done that. They've added some metalwork. It looks much newer, of course, than the dome we saw down there a minute ago that's above the bank. But they've kept it in line with the old stuff. All right? And then, of course, they've made a big song and dance about the year that they built this, which is 1988, obviously. Right? Okay, so we got that? All right. So let's move down the street, and then I'll show you something else. So we have that there. Let's go down here. Remember Southbourne that I showed you on one of the old videos when they had that, when you looked up on the corner there, again it was on the corner, and you had that what looked like a princess balcony tube with a cone on it type thing that's sticking out the side of the building upwards. Well, we have exactly the same here. This is bar gates. But look at this, right? What was that used for? Now if I go around to the side, you can see where they've filled in what look like keyholes, large keyholes. Right? It's what you often see in churches that appear as slits. Sorry, my phone's a bit wonky there because I've got it on the zoom, and of course every slight movement seems to shift it a light year. By the way, they don't exist light years. Yeah, so that's what you're seeing there. And in some castles or fortress type buildings, they leave the slits and then explain it that that's where the archers stood, and the slits are very thin from the outside so that you can't get hit. I mean, what nonsense. What absolute nonsense. They must have had Olympic archers back in the day. Anyway, there you see the building again, and that round bit on the corner that I keep talking about. And of course you can see the mud flood, and I keep saying that word, I'm gonna have to think of something else. You know, the difference in ground level. They haven't just brought the ground level up. Yes, they would have had to with roads and everything else, but like I've said before, the ground level has come up everywhere, not just right next to roads. Village churches, village halls, village schools, whatever, evidence of mud flood everywhere. But there you go. I thought I'd give you this this example here. This one's called The Railway. How befitting that before this ever was up and running, none of this would have been possible. None of it would have been possible. Ever. They'd still be hauling the stones out the quarry in Weymouth now if you didn't have railways and transportation systems and you know, infrastructure in place and all that. Yeah. That bus is older than the Priory. I mean, blimey, so loud. Wow. Yeah. Now let's go over to Christchurch train station. I've actually not been in Christchurch train station before, but we did have a little look at Folkestone a couple of days ago, didn't we? And I was looking at the fact that they only have 2 train tracks. Yes, they may have had more in the past, and maybe they've streamlined it and they've narrowed it down to 2, but that doesn't make sense. You wouldn't want more train tracks necessarily there. You want more train tracks like veins on a leaf. You'd want them veering off the main artery and getting into the pockets of communities that you can't get to, right? That would be the purpose of your transportation systems and your infrastructure, to be able to get your materials around and build and all that sort of stuff, and shift your men and your women around and your, you know, and all that. But anyway, so let's have a look at Christchurch train station and see what there is here, because there are often, especially in ye olde England, little things, buildings and stuff to look at that are quite interesting. So let's have a look. This place is called the Gateway to Historic Christchurch. Ooh, Gateway, big words. I hope you can still hear me. Well, this is Christchurch train station. So let's have a little look at this, because I've just seen there's a yeah, do I need to comment on that? Do I need to comment on that? No, I don't, so I won't. Well, I just did. But I shouldn't. I shouldn't. So, now, I'm not being funny, but they are the types of bridges you would expect to see. Not the ones I showed you yesterday in Folkestone, right? So there's how you would build your bridges. Very simple, very straightforward. Right, 2 walls and a ceiling. Strengthen the ceiling, you can get people walking over it. Basic. But the stuff we were showing you yesterday or the day before that is attributed allegedly to Brunel and all his men from the 1800s, it's just nonsense and, to be honest with you, an impossibility. Anyway, that's a good contrast of how you should build your bridge. Yeah, I'm just looking to see if there's anything particular. Well, you've got this bridge here that goes over me, but then of course there you've got your metalwork and everything. It's kind of how you'd expect things to be built in the Victorian days. Stuff like that. Very simple stuff. You know, and practical and all the rest of it. No arches and all that nonsense, right? So you build your wall left, you build your wall right, and then you'd cover it with metal. Very simple to do. That's how you would do it. And that's how they do it today. It's exactly how you do it. You wouldn't do arches with gazillions of bricks. And these were always kept level. The tracks were always kept level back in the day. Always. So if they had to go over a hill, what did they do? They burrowed through it and built tunnels. And again, here you have your 2 train tracks that I also said to you were in Folkestone. So you've got Christchurch here, then it goes to Folkestone, and then from Folkestone it goes into Bournemouth. Right? By the way, those train tracks never converge at the end. They just appear to. It's called perspective. So there we have it. The same perspective that you witness when things appear to lower on our, I can't even say appear, seem to lower on our horizon. Right, so there you go. This is Christchurch train station.
Services and stations are likely to be very
There we have it.
For latest travel advice, please visit Savills Priory.
Okie dokie. Out with the old, in with the new. What a contrast. An old Victorian train station to your left and a lovely, horrific tower behind that tree on your right. That about sums it up, doesn't it? But, well, there we have it. So I'm not too sure if the signal was any good today. I think the wind may have got in the way a little bit as well, because it was quite windy. It's not cold, it's just a bit windy. Bit of a shame. But I'll look back at the stream and see if it came out well at all, or if the pictures came out well at all. Yeah. So there's Christchurch. There is plenty more to look at in Christchurch, by the way, but I just didn't want to walk down to the quayside and all that because I can't. I just don't trust the connection. I might be, you know, the connection might stop suddenly, and you know, and yeah, not cool. But there we have it. There was a little dabble into Christchurch and the Priory, and as magnificent as the Priory is, as magnificent as all these cathedrals are, it's pretty much the same storyline from our angle, right? The ultra critical or the ultra observant angle. It's all the same stuff: add-ons, cladding, mud flood, etc., etc., etc. Right? It's the same for everyone. I've not been to a single cathedral or large church or anything like that that hasn't shown me evidence of that. They all have. Now, where I have seen churches not show that are in areas where, yes, they may well have been knocked up in the time that we're told. For example, garrison churches or military areas, right? But normally speaking, cathedrals, you know, centre points of towns and cities like cathedrals and all that, they all demonstrate the same in terms of anomalies, right? So I think kind of that goose is cooked, if you like, and I don't want to be flogging a dead horse. Hence the closer look now from now on in at the logistical side of things, because that's why I pointed out 2 train tracks here in Christchurch. So you've got 2 train tracks basically connecting the southwest of England with London, or with Southampton most definitely. Now when you go past Southampton, yes, you then have more tracks and then they go to London, but between the southwest of England and definitely Bournemouth, definitely Christchurch, you've just seen it, there are only 2 train lines. Right? So, you know, like I said a couple of days ago, that wouldn't have gone back in technological advancement. They would be going forwards. They wouldn't be going from 100 tracks down to 2 because they didn't need them anymore. No. You'd need to access it. You would have had to use them to build all these regions. What, as well as transport passengers to and fro? Because don't forget, the passengers must have been busy because, you know, allegedly from 1900 onwards, the world's population exploded from 1 billion to about 8 billion. Another favourite topic of mine, because again, it doesn't make sense. But yeah, I think looking at the buildings and trying to look for discrepancies, actually, I don't know. I'm not too sure that is the way forward anymore now for looking at this properly. Because, like I said earlier, there's a lot of messing around in these buildings. You don't know where the add-ons started. There's touch-up jobs everywhere. There's parts of the add-ons that are definitely made of the old stuff that you can see in the original old construction, but then what is original and how much of it is actually just the cladding, when was the cladding done. Then you have different times or dates printed into the metalwork and then the stones or whatever. It's just all over the place. And then you have the window frames that look like they erode just by the slightest touch, and yet they're supposed to have been in there as well the whole time. And then allegedly the roof is original. Well, that makes it 1,000 years old. And all this sort of thing. And you're like, well, where do you look first on these buildings? You can't really make head or tail of it. And it doesn't matter which building you look at. It can be Liverpool Cathedral. It could be any building you look at. You know, me and Trinity did it down in Bournemouth when you approach Bournemouth College, for example. The amounts of cladding, and a lot of that cladding was made up of what we thought and presume, and rightly so, would be part of the original building. So it's all a bit of a mishmash, right? And I think it's supposed to be, because it's what we see, isn't it? It's what we see. They can't hide it from us. Yeah, they can get rid of it or whatever, but even that takes a little bit of trickery. So yeah, I think you know, just looking at the logistics and the sheer practicalities of things is a good way to approach this. Anyway, I have waffled on now for far too long. I'm sure you'll all agree. Those of you watching now, you can wake up now. I've stopped talking, and And those of you who might tune in at a later time to watch this, thank you for doing so. Yeah. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. I'm going to most definitely take a close look at Westbourne soon. Again, it will be the same script in terms of the buildings and what we're going to find, but the amount of these buildings is quite eye-opening. You know, they clearly couldn't keep up with the destruction process, so they've had to, you know, like we said, repurpose. And that's what they've done. Okie doke. Well, on this note from a beautiful day here in Christchurch on the south coast of England, on what is it? What's the date today? Is it the 16th of September today? Yes, it is the 16th. Friday the 16th of September, so we're already nearly in October. Blimey, another month and a half and it's Halloween. Not that that matters, but just in terms of temperature drop and difference in climate. Anyway, yeah. So thank you very much, like I said, for joining me. I hope I made a little bit of sense with what I was talking about. You know, sometimes it comes out a bit, not sideways necessarily, but a bit, you know, not even all over the place, but a bit sort of lacking in pattern because, you know, you've seen other stuff when you're doing this. Anybody who's done this will know what I'm on about. You know, you're walking around and you see something on your left and then you're, you know, hearing stuff, you're looking out for signage, this, that and the other. Salvation Army. Salvation lies within, does it? Well, yes it does, but not in the way they tell us. Well, not so long ago, a few years, I would have nipped in there, had a lunchtime drink. Not anymore, because far bigger fish to fry. Okie dokie. Well, on that note, thank you, like I said, thank you for joining us, joining me. I really do appreciate your time. I'm going to probably grab myself a quick coffee somewhere now and enjoy the weather a little bit. I've actually got band practice tonight, so I'm really looking forward to that. For those of you who know me quite well, I play in a band that I think are a very, very good band. I play with some excellent musicians, all three of them. And so I'm very, very honoured and grateful and glad to be part of that. So we're going to be practicing this evening. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we'll see what the weekend brings. Tomorrow I'll be meeting a friend tomorrow afternoon, and then we'll see what happens. It's like me reading out my diary for everybody, isn't it? Not that I have a diary. Well, I do actually have a diary, but it's not listed in a way that I could read it. Right, so anyway, there you go. I'm going to head off now. I'm going to scoot. I'm going to grab myself a cup of tea, or a cup of coffee I should say, and then head back, because I don't want to get back too late, because, well, yeah, like I said, band practice tonight. Can't wait. Alright, well, on a sunny day from Christchurch, I bid you all farewell. I will see you all soon, I'm sure, but some of yous, no doubt, much sooner. Thank you seriously for looking in. I know I've said it 3 times already, and we will talk soon. And excuse all the background noise. Alright, thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe, look after each other, stay sane, safe in our sense of the word, and look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Alright, thank you, and ta-ta for now.